Many of us have heard about the infamous Annabelle doll, whose story was featured in the Conjuring film. But very few people know that Robert the doll is actually the most haunted doll in the world. Robert is a real-life possessed doll who is responsible for many terrifying events, including divorces and accidents. Dolls are undoubtedly one of a child's first pals. We give them names, dress them up, and carry them around with us. We probably think they're the most amazing things on earth as children, right? Wrong. A lot can happen. In the past, there have been several instances of dolls turning evil. The horror stories of dolls that have been possessed by evil spirits have caused many tragedies, and this is enough to keep one up at night. Strap in as we tell you the story of Robert the doll. As the story goes, young Otto started to attribute his misfortunes to the doll. The older people in the house started to notice the strange events, particularly as Otto and Robert grew older, but it was impossible to shrug it off as children's play. As Otto got older, he resided in a grand house he named the Artist House, where Robert was perched at the top window. The house was avoided by many because school kids vowed that Robert would show up and then disappear. When Myrtle Reuter passed away in 1974, Myrtle Reuter bought the Artist House and took over as Robert's new caretaker. In the attic, visitors claimed to hear giggles and footsteps. After 20 years of mischief, Reuter promised Robert he would be able to move around the house on his own and donated him to the museum. But far from it, this didn't curtail the doll. Its appearance at the museum only signaled a turning point. Visitors have been going into the museum ever since Robert arrived to see the sneaky doll. He's even made TV appearances, had his aura captured on camera, gone on a ghost tour, and served as the basis for a horror film. He also has social media accounts and a Wikipedia entry. Fans of Robert can purchase replicas of him, books, coasters, and t-shirts. The most daring can even volunteer to be locked up with him after hours. According to Convertito, he receives 1 to 3 letters per day on average. Yet they're not your normal fan letters. They frequently contain regrets. Several tourists submit letters pleading for pardon after attributing their post-visit problems to disrespecting Robert, in some cases, explicitly. Others approach him seeking his counsel or a curse on the offender. More than 1,000 letters have allegedly been received by Convertito, who keeps and catalogs them. Also, Robert gets emails and tributes. After it was known that Robert loves sweets, people started leaving him candy. He once got a box with a card and 8 bags of peppermints, but no address. Out of prudence, Robert's sweets are not consumed by museum workers. Even though the haunted doll Robert is notorious for being somewhat creepy, it looks harmless, similar to any other childhood friendship between a boy and his toy. When Robert Gene Otto was 4 years old, everything began. It was 1904 when a little Bahamian girl handed him a life-size straw-stuffed doll fashioned of fabric. According to some locals, the doll was presented as a gift or perhaps as payback for some infraction. Gene is said to have carried Robert around with him despite the doll perhaps being a little too big and cumbersome for a youngster of his age. But as time goes on, Robert the doll's tale becomes unsettling and eerie. Others in Gene's life and those from outside the house began to realize that the doll was off in some way. According to many legends, Gene was alone in his room when the Otto household's maids overheard him speaking in 2 unique voices. Gene occasionally woke up yelling. The doll reportedly moved around the house by itself, and some report that the doll's expressions would change as it listened in on nearby conversations. Hit that subscribe button now. Also, be sure to like, share, and turn on the notification bell to be notified on our next story. Done? Alright. The Otto family frequently overheard Gene conversing with the doll as he played in his room. The one-sided chats eventually developed into full-fledged interactions with 2 different voices. When the doll was alone in a room, the family would hear it laughing, and upon entering, they would notice that its posture and expression had changed. The noises of furniture being thrown across her son's room one night was the most scary part for Miss Otto. Robert had already been tucked in his bed while all this was happening. Miss Otto ran into the room to find out what was going on, and Gene explained to her how he had been startled by the commotion and discovered his doll sitting at the foot of his bed with its vacant eyes staring at him. Gene finally abandoned his boyhood toy and family home to pursue a painting career in New York and France. He met Annette Parker while living in France and they got married. Nonetheless, the couple returned to Key West to live in their newly inherited estate after Gene's parents passed away. Despite Gene's negative childhood experience with the doll, the Robert doll continued to be a part of his life even after he got married, and Gene's wife detested the doll and even banished him from the attic. Unsurprisingly, this didn't sit well with Robert the haunting doll, who then made another demand of Eugene, asking for the turret room in the home because he wanted a room with a view of the street. Up until his passing in 1974, Gene spent all of his time painting and conversing with his doll in the turret room. The Robert doll narrative continues even after Gene and his wife passed away. Myrtle Reuter, who looked after Robert, bought the Otto residence. Locals reported hearing laughter and footsteps around the house when Reuter was the owner of the doll. Even now, the mythology surrounding Robert the doll has persisted long after Eugene's passing. Myrtle Reuter, the person who purchased Eugene's home, looked after Robert after the home was sold. Many of Eugene's tales were confirmed by Reuter, who frequently discovered Robert at a completely different location than where she had left him. Robert didn't get along with guests at his new home, and they discovered that he would appear and vanish at will. She and her guests further assert that when Eugene was mentioned negatively, Robert's already eerie look seemed to shift. Robert was given by Myrtle to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida in 1994. The museum's staff alleges that Robert has been discovered in various postures inside of his case, that footsteps have been heard in the museum at night without a clear cause, and that Robert has been known to alter his countenance quickly, going from neutral to threatening. Visitors to the museum are given instructions on how to approach Robert, including politely speaking to him, asking his permission to take pictures of him, and treating him with respect. Letters from visitors apologizing for their actions while at the museum are all over the walls of Robert's exhibit. They claim to have suffered terrible misfortune, accidents, relationship problems, or even death or illness in the family as a result of their visit to Robert, and they ask for his forgiveness. You could easily be excused for assuming that Robert's antics would end once he was placed in a glass exhibit, but nothing could be farther from the truth. Robert's significant action only served to strengthen the legend and increase his exposure. Today, he even has his own social media profiles and a Robert replica doll. If there's anything to be believed about voodoo, then perhaps the rising ill luck of museum visitors is merely a result of the curse being disseminated farther and farther due to Robert's greater exposure and the sale of copies of him. Although it doesn't happen often, Robert the doll has been blamed for deaths before. A Key West ghost tour guide who had Robert tattooed on his arm passed away shortly after getting the tattoo done. So, would you visit him at the museum? Or maybe you have already. Let us know how you felt during your time there. It has been an exciting peek into the life of Eugene and his haunted doll, Robert. For more awesome content, please click the like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on our amazing content. Till then, take care.